Fishing trips anywhere, anytime. FishingBooker.com.
Hey, what's up, happy people? This is Robert Arrington from Deer Meat for Dinner. If you're into bow fishing like I am, you need to check out Cajun Bow Fishing. I've been using their gear for years, from the Sucker Punch Pro to the Winch Pro Reel. It's tough, it's reliable, and it works. Whether you're just getting started or you're ready to take the step to the next level, head over to CajunBowfishing.com and check out everything Cajun Bow Fishing has to offer. I trust their gear because it works. So if you're hitting the water soon, make sure you're rigged up with Cajun Bow Fishing. You will not regret it.
Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast. Today, well, we're going to talk about mental health. Mental health when things get bad, right? There's a lot of other people who know a lot more talking about mental health, so I'll leave that one alone as far as that. But when things go off grid, not a lot of people talking about it. When the world collapses, right? So I guess originally I'd considered this topic, over the years, and I was like, do we jump into that or how do we do it? And I kind of, in my mind, I just had visions of like sociopaths and people with hallucinations and all this stuff and who are going to come get us. They're all serial killers. And that's how I imagined it. And a listener, Holly, reached out and was like, hey, you guys got to tackle mental health. And I'm like, all right, I guess it's like mental health month and who knows, So it's like, all right, so the big thing is basically as preppers, the big fear that everybody has is supply chain disruptions and government and normal society not being there to support you, right? That's why a lot of people are homesteaders and they just hate people or just want to get away from the chaos in the world. And maybe they feel like the values of the world are changing and not exactly where they align with, and they want to be able to isolate and protect their family or just not have to deal with things that they feel are crazy or inappropriate, right? Mm-hmm. That's, I guess, what, we do as preppers. I think a lot of it is, hey, let's find a way to protect my family. So bottom line, what happens when we have a SHTF scenario or the grid collapses, right? So one thing is, right, the supply chain stops and you have like 2 to 3 days, that on-demand delivery system. So that means your pharmacy as well as your food stores are shutting down. Mm-hmm. Your pharmacy is not going to be able to handle things. Mental health facilities, prisons, all these things are not going to be able to maintain. They're not going to have big supplies of drugs to go on, indefinitely. Right. They're not going to be able to maintain keeping all the people. I'm sure people will decide different things. There's lots of theories about what the prisons would do, but I'm sure what they consider low-level criminals, they're probably going to get let go.
Yeah. I mean, they did that. They did that during COVID.
California runs out of money, right? Like with COVID, and they just let people out. So that's one of the things. So
and let's keep in mind that there are a lot of people that would prioritize robbing pharmacies at the outset of these types of things. A lot of junkies, a lot of drug addicts, a lot of people that just like to get high are going to, go in there and ransack stuff. And maybe you need Adderall for your mental health, but they just want to have fun,
Right. And so, as preppers, one, we plan for resilience, right? We plan for self-reliance and how to have a backup and whatever. But there's a lot of things you can do for mental health. And it turns out the more I dug into it, the more I found depression and anxiety are going to affect so many people. I looked up sociopaths. One study showed that like 1 in 100 is a sociopath. Right. Or, and another, like when I just search, like you get that Google AI answer of whatever, they're like 3 to 5%. Mm-hmm. And I think it's somewhere between 1 and 5%, who knows? Right.
There's a lot of different answers out there.
It really doesn't matter, right? I mean, bottom line, there is a small percentage of society that are going to be kind of on that crazy end. However, I think that is also going to just fall into the regular security that we do as preppers. The regular, home security, OPSEC, all that stuff. I mean, because bottom line is whether people are sociopaths or not, there are going to be people out there who are willing to hurt you to take care of their own family. And they might, the crazy or people with, issues and no restraints mentally are going to maybe be quicker to adapt. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily any worse than the other people you're going to be dealing with anyway. I think bigger mental health issue that's going to get people is this is a huge disruption, and there is disruptions in all phases of their life. First, most people have like a 30-day to 90-day supply of the meds on your house. And that's even like when you get the refill, I get a 90-day one. Well, long before you refill that. Like you go down to, 5 days before my refill comes up, Pharmacy doesn't even have it, or your insurance won't even approve it until like 10 days earlier or whatever. Right. There. So you're not really 90 days. You're some part of 90 days that you have. Pharmacies will close. Supply chains, they shut down. The next thing that's a big trigger is you have a loss of routine. All of a sudden, your safety is more at risk. And it's also uncertainty. I know, like with my job, they're like, after these tariffs, who knows who's going to be buying engines or doing anything, or, we don't know. Your job could go away tomorrow. At least willing to threaten us with that instead of just pretending like everything's good and the door. Although I have a feeling the company I work at would have no problem just closing the door and be like, yeah. I was to work yesterday and I got a message. Hey, everybody who was off this weekend, you're not now. And
all right, great.
Friday at 2:00 in the afternoon. Like that's, and it was, hey, a lot of the guys, these aren't me, but a lot of the guys do like 10-hour shifts. And so they'll hit 40 hours in 4 days. And then they were like, all right, you hit 40 hours. We're going to take Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So now you're thinking mentally, I have a 3-day weekend. I'm going to take that time off. And then 2:00 on Friday, after you've made plans and done something, you're working tomorrow and the next day. And then you're like, oh. So my point is, when you have stressors like that, it messes with your head, right? And it's not really a good way to treat people. But it also turns out when you have the apocalypse happening, it's going to mess with your head a little bit. Like, hey, that was just a little stress. Like you messed up my weekend. Now I have uncertainty of, am I going to have food next week? Are people going to come kill me at any moment?
People that are prone to anxiety, this is just going to double, triple it.
Right. And normally, back when you're as old as me, you used to go watch like Seinfeld or something to kind of distract you from life, right? That'd be your getaway. I don't know what people watch now. I'm out in the garden or doing work, but people watch things. I guess now with the alternative, maybe I watch Homestead Rescue, probably not the same thing, but whatever. But that world that you're used to, everything's changed. Your diet's changed, right? Your job has changed, your daily routine, your sleep schedule. Are you up like standing a watch now, keeping an eye out at night? All these things, that's kind of huge. Your you're changing stuff and your medication is going away. And all these stressors add to a lot. Now, we saw a lot during COVID that people started getting depressed and anxious and just feeling that, isolated, right? You feel like, hey, I can't do my normal, and
a lot of people,
and it upsets people.
Yeah, a lot of people cured that with alcohol, that was one of the emergency, priority businesses that stayed open was the liquor store,
So let's talk. I mean, obviously we're about solving problems, right? Not just talking about problems. I know Kevin and I both did a lot of research on this, and we were discussing it a minute ago is, you can't, everybody wants to be like, yeah, you're going to be depressed. Well, yeah. Now, what do I do about it? So let's get into it, right? That's what matters. And definitely, if you guys have ideas, appreciate it in the comments, things like that. Let us know what you're thinking. Obviously, people find things that work for them, and maybe that'd help somebody else. But there's a couple of things now. So one, you can talk to your doctor and you can say, hey, what if something bad happened and there was a disruption? We saw shortages with COVID. I mean, there's a lot of real practical, not insane ways to look at, drug distribution might get disrupted, right? Now, I'm sure doctors have some kind of limitation on what they're allowed, how far out they're to prescribe, things like that. I don't know exactly their limits, but talk to your doctor and say, hey, is there any way instead of 30 days, I could be on a 90-day rotation or, things like that? That's what you need to talk to your doctor about and see what you could do. Another thing to actually consult with your doctor about would be, if I got disrupted, how would I wean off this drug? There was a study that says people have 50% less withdrawal symptoms if they gradually cut off of, they call them SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake. Is that how you say it? I don't know. Inhibitors. But anyway, when you go off those, I don't know the drug exactly. I'm not the guy. And again, this is why I'm saying talk to your doctor, right?
Right.
But when you go off of those, they say if you wean off it, but there's actually like ways to do it, know?
Right. You can't just, can't just cut it in half and then, go down to zero. You have the specific ways. Yeah. And every drug is different.
And you just talk to your guy and say, hey, what do I do? What's the right answer? Do I take one every 2 days? Do I, whatever, you figure out that routine. And is there a way to ease it? He might have some theories. Now, the next thing, especially anxiety and depression, there are a lot of supplements that work, and I'm sure they maybe don't necessarily work as good as, prescription drugs, because, that's always the thing. They make it prescription if it works. Right. So I got a lot for you here. We're going to go through a little quick list. You might want to get a notepad if this is something you're thinking about, right? So St. John's wort is good for mild to moderate depression. That ashwagandha you see all the time now, they're always pushing on TikTok. Maybe they figure everybody's, having stress in life. That's big for stress and anxiety. Valerian root is good for anxiety and insomnia. There's one called passion flower, anxiety and insomnia. Saffron, good for depression. There's something called kava that's good for anxiety. So there's these things out there.
I found also lemon balm.
Yeah.
Just because it grows all over my yard, and I was trying to figure out what to do with it. And it's great for anti-anxiety. It's great for sleep.
Lavender. There's a lot of things. But so kind of do some research on your symptoms and what kind of things you could be doing. Now, I'm saying to look for alternatives. Then I would go to your doctor and be like, hey, with my specific needs, which one of these are going to actually help me, right? Which one is going to be the best thing? Should I do a combination of things? Is this something? And you could kind of try it out and see if these things help you. So that's something you might want to, talk about. The next thing you could do, right? So we talk to our doctor initially about our drugs having longer supplies. We talk about supplements that might be able to get in there. The next thing is to actually create structure and routine. They say, like, if you feed your chickens every morning at 7, it becomes like an anchor in your brain, and you build up these things, and you have that routine. Now, especially routines that are going to fit into a disaster scenario, this might be extra helpful, when this comes through. Think about, you could exercise, actually, they always say, is really good for reducing anxiety. Right. It's really kind of the focus. And I feel like this is my own personal opinion, but I feel like with anxiety, one of the big things is that you can distract yourself when you're doing stuff. So if I'm digging a hole, I'm focused on digging a hole. Where am I putting the shovel? Where am I getting it? Instead of my mind wandering somewhere. If I'm chopping wood, if I'm planting a garden, if I'm doing a task like that, I can have my mind there instead of worrying about what's next. And the cool thing is, as you're solving problems, you're actually getting rid of the worry, right? You're alleviating some of the, hey, how am I going to stay warm in the coming months? Well, I'm chopping all this firewood. I'm actually making sure I'm not going to get cold, or I'm planting a garden, or I'm hunting, or I'm, setting a trap. I'm running my routine. I'm out collecting eggs. All these things are encouraging that reliance. Another thing that is really helpful is the more you build up security in your life, right? So if I have long-term food storage, right? My Patriot supply, something like that. Or I just filled my pantry, or I listened to Chuck and Kevin's episode on, going to Walmart and buying a lot of stuff that I can put in buckets, and have that confidence you get from, hey, I'm not going to run out of food, is going to help alleviate all that stress and anxiety. I say all, but it's going to alleviate some, right? It's going to eliminate some of those stressors, takes away one of the big things. So that's something that you might want to really plan. They talk about even like journaling or talking. One of the things, it's funny, as a kid, you go to like Boy Scout camp or something like that, and you're, again, away from your routine. Things get disrupted. You're not at home with your Nintendo or your whatever. And you start to get like a sadness or depression sometimes, unless you're filled with entertainment or new projects, right? That's what they do. They jam pack it full of stuff at camp, right? And one of the things they do is like the stories, like campfire stories. Well, part of that is like a mental health thing. And also cool if they're like moral, have a purpose, and or how they used to, like the Indians used to celebrate a successful hunt, and they do like, ceremonies and things to like grow optimism, and hey, look, everything's going to be okay. We just got a big deer, or, whatever. I don't know what type of hunts they would celebrate, if something as routine as deer or whatever, but when you have a good time, then that's going to help build morale and confidence, and it's going to instill that. So that's something to think about. And like I said, pre-planned calories, things like that are really awesome. One of the things you might want to look into, how they talk about those grounding pads for your bed?
Yeah.
And the copper, that's something that wouldn't go away with the power, right? You'd still have it.
Is that real though? Does that actually?
I don't know. I'm always curious about it. And they say it's like copper intertwined with the thread, and like, in your thing, you can like have sheets that are kind of touching it. I don't know, but that's another thing to look at. Chamomile and peppermint teas are good at like lowering cortisol. They say within 20 minutes, it'll lower cortisol. Well, cortisol, I had to actually look it up. I didn't know. I was like, well, what the hell is cortisol? What does that do for me? I mean, I've heard about it and heard it in regards to stress, but I don't want to be an idiot talking about things I don't know what I'm talking about. So I was like, let me dig into that. Cortisol is your stress hormone, and it actually causes anxiety and depression, and it builds up when you're stressed and things like that. So something like peppermint or chamomile, these things are going to help lower that. That's one more step you can do to keep things. And the thing is, a lot of us think, well, I don't have any issue with depression, or I don't have any, but you have a family. You're going to have people in your network here. You're going to, and I bet you in modern America that you know somebody who deals with depression.
Yeah. I mean, there's odds are that somebody in your family,
immediate group even. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I know that I definitely have somebody that I'm going to be helping taking care of that's going to have issues with that. And I think that, I think that a lot of us, and, as an adult, you're going to be taking care of children that are just more prone to emotional health issues because they don't have the experience dealing with that sort of stuff.
Right.
So even somebody that isn't prone to depression or prone to anxiety is going to be having mental health issues dealing with extreme situation.
Yeah. Another thing is like maybe learn, like, especially as like a group leader or stuff, thinking about mediation and how to kind of keep everybody happy, but like solve problems with ideas. Another thing, like this is something that I struggle with as a New Yorker, and I think every New Yorker kind of had the issue, is we talk, and I might be on the extreme edge of it, with abruptness, right? We're very matter of fact, just do it instead of like considering feelings. Now I moved down to the South. You guys know I'm in North Carolina, and they have a different way of speaking and dealing with each other.
Yeah. Instead of calling you a dumbass, they'll say, bless your heart.
Yeah, there you go. See, but that's the thing, like learning to maybe not aggravate people or push people's buttons could actually help the whole cohesiveness and environment of your work group. And the thing is, sometimes, I don't know who would do this, but people say things because you know how you sometimes hear the expression where they talk about in marriage, it's better to be happy than be right.
Right.
It's kind of like that. I'm not saying just go along with whatever, right? We can't make bad decisions because decisions matter in the apocalypse, but that's one of the things that you need to realize. Like, you can't be like, everything matters and you have to do it my way because I know everything. You maybe need to deal with that cohesiveness of, let's consider things, but here's why I'm thinking it, and maybe explaining things, but without being in a condescending way, right? Like not being mansplaining kind of thing, right? Like they say. But the idea is maybe look at some of those techniques and look in yourself, and just, I'm not saying don't tell people how it is and how they have to deal with it, but I'm saying if we do a little bit of effort to try and frame things delicately in the beginning, then you could maybe avoid some of that confrontation, and then you'd have less stress. And I know you're saying, well, it takes mental energy to do that, and it does. And that's why it's a good thing to plan out now how we speak to each other and kind of work on that. If you could, that would be awesome. Believe it or not, as a like leader in a group, there are like mental health first aid courses that I've seen them online for like $100 to $200 that actually teach you how to respond and watch, like for people with psychosis or suicidal thoughts and things you can do with that. As a veteran, we tend to pay attention to that a little bit. And it turns out veteran life kind of overlaps with shit hits the fan end of the world kind of life. And a lot of those same stressors that upset veterans, and these are hard men trained and prepared, that when thrown into this environment can be stressed and anxiety. So if people who aren't trained and prepared are thrown into this environment, it's definitely probable and something you could, really feel like is a real possibility. Am I wrong on that, Kevin? Or
right? No, you're 100% right. Now there is certain things you can do for yourself that that'll help you, deal with those situations and help the people around you deal with those situations. Somebody once said something to me that stuck. They said, sleep is a weapon, and it really does make sense. I know that if I get, 2 or 3 hours of sleep, I'm not saving any time by starting work earlier. You know what I mean? I'm redoing things. I'm fucking things up instead of getting it right the first time and moving on to the next step. And I really kind of prioritized that in my life the past few years. And it's a big step up, making sure that I get 6 or 7 hours of sleep every single night is, really helps me out with day-to-day situations. Another thing that, a couple other things that are important for people's mental health is eating a balanced diet. But, that might be an issue that you're dealing with, that you're not able to get a balanced diet every day.
Right.
So that's going to add to the situations. What a good way to deal with that is working on your practicing mindfulness. Now, I know that's like some woo-woo shit I hear like yoga teachers and shit talk about, but I mean, it actually does help, breathing techniques, yoga, meditation, all those things. If you have time, it's worth investing time in mindfulness, especially, during stressful days.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's like even how you frame things in your mind. So being like, my livestock keeps me going kind of thing. Like, some people just care about their animals and taking care of their animals. And that's my reason to get up in the morning. It's not my reason to get up in the morning, but I'm saying it could be yours, right? To get up and go, but taking care of my family is a reason to get up in the morning. And being a good provider, like I have things very framed as, it's my job to take care of and provide and protect my family. And these things go through my head, but they give me purpose and reason to get up in the morning every day. Right. That's a thing, people have faith or just even a good philosophy in life. Right. Believing in God and doing that thing. That's one, way that people cope with it and have that structure in their mind. There was a speaker I used to listen to on the radio, Tammy Bruce, I think is who it was. And she talked about, I think she was an atheist. I don't know if she is now or whatever, but she was saying, I don't believe in God, but it's so important that structure and there's a higher power in people's mind. Otherwise politicians would have no reason to not just like roll over you. Right. And that's one of the things, you can like that framework and having a purpose makes a big deal. Basically stoicism, me and my buddies, we were talking about this at work and kind of how things would help or not help. And, it's like, oh, well, what about that guy? There's that guy who's always happy, and just you come over and you see him and he's like, hey, how's it going? And that guy's never stressed about anything, never worried. At least that's what we see on the surface. And I actually, knowing the guy pretty well, I kind of believe it to be true. It's how he is. And he doesn't worry about anything. He's just like, yeah, hey, good to be here. And, whatever, what's going on. And it's like, in my mind, I'm like, I want to incorporate more of that in my life. Right. I would be so much, it would be great if I could be that happy, easy guy. No, it's not actually worked out or anything as far as me changing my lifestyle, but it's like, I get it, but the more we can implement those principles, that's one of the things, like they talk about people who like read the Bible every day or go to church every Sunday. It keeps you grounded in what you want to be. And I think focusing or hanging around and not trying to corrupt the people who are like you want to be, but more trying to focus on how you can incorporate things and make yourself more that guy is awesome. And that's really the way, to be, is just to keep always getting better. Right. So, I mean, basically, to kind of summarize it all, it's, you want to focus on your overall preparedness. The more ready and prepared you are, the more you're going to be able to deal with these traumas that come up, and the less they're going to impact your life. Mm-hmm. Maybe try fasting, right? And go 24 hours without food. Your body kind of prepares itself for that hardship and knows what it's like. And you're also, you're mentally prepared for it. You realize, hey, I didn't die. It didn't go so bad. I was able to work it out. It's not what I want, but it's okay. You know, those hardships, that kind of thing, can really make it a little bit better, help you get prepared and ready to deal with things. That's a good way to be. And the more, we build, for me, it's building that prepper lifestyle, right? The more I have my own power, I have a solar well, or I have rabbits in the back that I know I have a good meat source. I have chickens laying eggs that I know how to feed my chickens, even if I can't go buy bags of feed at the grocery store. Or, I buy books on how to feed my meat rabbits without, from outside, right? For free. I still buy feed from the store. Don't think I'm 100% awesome. I'm just saying I look at ways that I can incorporate these things. My chickens free range less than I would like them to because we have problems with predators. But if I didn't have feed from the store, I could definitely do a lot more free ranging and deal with things. I'd also probably set up a bigger watch of looking out for predators. That's the kind of thing. But those predators might make it to my dinner plate. I'm just saying.
That's true.
You kind of find a way to incorporate it, but having that longer term food storage or will immediately take away stress. Practicing and preparedness, knowing I have a get home bag in my car, knowing even something as simple as knowing I have a battery booster to jump my car if it gets stuck, or knowing that I have a good spare tire in my car. Those things are going to give me confidence in the day that, hey, that's one thing I don't have to worry about. When we're younger and money's tight and whatever, people think about I was driving around on bald tires, and you're thinking about it constantly, right?
Right.
You're like, oh, these tires could go at any time, and that's something I have to do, or this debt that I'm hanging over me. And I'm not saying it's easy for anybody to make these big problems go away, but I'm saying that it makes it clear that the more we're prepared, those stresses go away. Right. So if I have extra food, that's not the worry. Or I have a gun and I'm a little bit more prepared, I'm less worried about predators or people coming and harassing me. Right. A little bit, and obviously we take as many steps as we can to move forward in the right direction. And that's that same thing of, talking to your doctor beforehand. Hey, here's how you would do it. Here's how you transition. These are supplements that are going to make it better, that you can stockpile a year's worth and maybe for inexpensive, right? And you could grow some peppermint and chamomile so that you have, you can make tea and figure out how to do that. So you have backup plans, right, for your stressors. And these are the steps. And the idea is taking it now and just having a clear picture is going to alleviate. I'm not saying it's going to alleviate all the stress, but I'm saying it's going to make it 30% less or 50% less. And that sounds way better than not having a plan and not being prepared.
Right. I think that's a good point, though, is that this is going to be a stressful situation for people that aren't prone to stress. You know what I mean? It's going to make things more difficult for people that are, well prepared for it.
Yes.
So people that are prone to stress, people that are prone to anxiety are going to have a much harder time adjusting to, these types of long-term dangerous situations. And having a routine that you can anchor your life in is going to be a big step up.
Yeah, no, 100%. So anyway, thoughts, comments. Love if you, you guys like, subscribe, all those things you should do. That always helps out. We put a lot of effort, did a lot of research into putting this together, and, we appreciate it's easy enough to hit the button. So thank you. And with that, I would say email us with questions, concerns, preppingbadass@gmail.com. Don't forget, maybe join the Facebook group, sign up, hang out with us. Otherwise, I would say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Create stories for life on a Scenic Eclipse Mediterranean voyage. With Scenic, it's more than a journey of a lifetime. It's ultra-luxury cruising along elegant European Rivieras and idyllic Italian coastlines. It's being immersed in the history and culture of glamorous cities, towns, and villages. It's colorful architecture, landscapes, and regional cuisine. Scenic Eclipse, in a class of its own. Book your all-inclusive voyage now and save.
Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
Gear up for the hunt and learn from the best with Deer and Deer Hunting Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV. Tune in every week for expert hunting tips and unforgettable moments in the field. Waypoint TV, your destination for outdoor entertainment.